There's an 18-year-old Black woman in Madison, Wisconsin, who was set on fire by white men. She was stopped at a stoplight, and she says that as she was waiting at that stoplight in Madison, Wisconsin, they sprayed her with lighter fluid and then lit her on fire.
In preparation for recording this video, I did precisely what none of the journalists in the mainstream media did, and that is that I read the full police report from cover to cover. So I can say to you with some confidence, this is about fraud. This is about politically motivated deception on a massive scale. As I'm asking you to be very skeptical about what mainstream news broadcasters have told you about this case that unfolded at the height of public fascination with the Black Lives Matter movement a few months ago, it is inevitable that you will be skeptical of what I have to say also. And so, in opening this video, just to pique your skepticism, I would like to point out that this is videotape evidence of precisely what happened when this young woman drove through the intersection where she said these extraordinary events unfolded. This is the log, moment by moment, of when her car passed through each of the intersections downtown, including the one where she described these extraordinary events happening. And this is the text message she sent to her boyfriend approximately 3 minutes after those events unfolded, when her hair and face would have still been smoldering after she had padded out the flames.
Now to an ABC News exclusive. The 18-year-old biracial woman who says she was attacked by 4 white men while she was driving. Althea Bernstein says she was set on fire, and Alex Perez joins us with the latest on the investigation. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, good morning, George. The 18-year-old says she's studying to be a paramedic, and some of those skills kicked in at the horrifying moment she was attacked. This morning, police in Madison, Wisconsin are searching for the suspects responsible for this. A young biracial woman suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns after she says she was set on fire.
She said, I was listening to some music at a stoplight, and then all of a sudden I heard someone yell the N-word really loud. I turned my head to look, and somebody's throwing lighter fluid on me, and then they threw a lighter at me, and my neck caught on fire, and I tried to put it out.
I haven't really slept, and I don't really have an appetite, so it's just, I don't want anyone to ever feel like this. I don't even remember anything, but your brain still has that flight or fight response that takes care of you. So I made it home. I called my mom. I drove myself to the ER.
Now, an active and ongoing investigation, Madison's mayor saying, while we are still learning more about the details, current information suggests this may have been a premeditated crime targeted toward people of color, which makes the incident even more disturbing.
It's definitely a learning opportunity, and I'm very, very hopeful that these men sort of see all the responses and that they know that they hurt me. And that this is something that's going to affect me for a while.
She was not terribly convincing on camera, and looking at the police report, it seems that she was not terribly convincing off camera either. Quote, Althea stated that she didn't think Nick would do anything violent to her. Althea then stated, quote, I don't remember anything, close quote. That would look great in court if this were to ever go to court. She stated that the fact that there isn't any video of the attack happening really concerns her and confuses her. And I'll bet the original audio recording of this discussion with the police, she would sound very confused indeed and would further discredit herself in court. I asked her if, when she said she didn't remember anything, she meant she didn't remember anything from that night, or she didn't remember Livingston doing anything violent or harmful to her. Althea then stated, quote, I don't remember the attack, close quote. She stated that she remembered it really well a couple days after it occurred, but that had been slowly fading from her memory since then. Althea went on to say she feels as though her brain is erasing or cutting out the memories of the attack as time goes by. Yes, quite apart from the level of scrutiny required for a police investigation or for a conviction in court, just imagine if journalists did basic fact-checking and asked questions of this kind.
So, we're doing this story live, and you just looked it up. So I have not had a chance to read the details. But presumably, if she went to the hospital and she's got burns on her neck and face, that's verifiable. And so if it turns out not to be the case, obviously we'll come back and tell you that.
We continue reading directly from the police report. Quote, I told Althea that one of the things we had questions about was a number of steps that she had taken as she left Livingston's apartment. I explained that based both on her and Livingston's statement, she had left his apartment and walked to her car on her own. I stated that there was a large number of steps and a longer amount of time that didn't seem consistent with her just leaving his apartment and going to her car. I pause. How do the police know this? Because all of these people are carrying cell phones and are constantly messaging one another, so you know their precise location and what they're doing almost at every moment of the day. Both she and Livingston believe this car was parked right outside. So there was one little gap in the schedule that couldn't be accounted for. Whereas if you look at how many moments passed when she drove through each intersection without ever stopping at a red light, without ever having her window down and listening to music, without any of the most basic assumptions of her fabricated story having been true, there wasn't any time there when she could have been attacked or could have received the burns. But there was some time when she was with her boyfriend when something could have happened. I asked if she remembered anything else from that night that might have happened in between leaving Livingston's apartment and getting to her car. Althea answered, quote, I don't even know, close quote. Again, that would stand up really well in court. And if you were just a journalist covering this case and you just read this, if you were a journalist, you didn't even conduct the interview, you just read this summary of the police interview, how would you report the story?
I want to share one more detail that she shared with authorities. She said two of them were wearing all black and the other two donned floral shirts and jeans. And keep in mind that lately there have been far-right protesters, agitators, essentially white supremacists who have been showing up at Black Lives Matter protests to cause problems, in some cases even attack some of the protesters.
Althea asked if we had been able to find any cameras around Livingston's apartment. So it's like, so the police are confronting you with this. Like, hey, we have a different explanation for these events concerning what happened when you were at or around your boyfriend's apartment. She's like, well, do you have videotape evidence of that? Quote, I stated that we had not. Althea then stated, I'm 100% confident of what happened. Oh, gee, just a few seconds ago, you said you were confused and you didn't remember and it felt like it was erased from your memory. And then you asked, do you have videotape evidence of that? Oh, okay, then I'm 100% confident of what happened. Yeah. You have discredited yourself. And this is not the only evidence in this police report. I could make an hour-long video. Trust me, the problem here is not the police. The problem here is the politically motivated press and the way this is made into propaganda. Althea went on to say that she very firmly believes that what she told us in the days immediately after the attack is what happened to her. Althea added, quote, I just don't understand why there's no evidence. I just don't understand why the videotape evidence of what actually happened at that intersection isn't the same as my lie. Most of the police report is unredacted, which is to say uncensored, but there are some interesting erasures like this one. Anything to do with her health, anything to do with the psychiatric medications she may be taking, anything to do with what the burns actually were caused by, whether the burns on her face were caused by flame or by abrasion or by a chemical reaction. That has been omitted, and naturally people are asking questions. So, although the physical examination of the human being involved in the story has been kept from public view, the examination of the car has not been. And yes, as you can imagine, there is telling physical evidence, including chemical testing, forensic laboratories, so on and so forth, that once again discredits her ridiculous, difficult to believe story. These are not the only demonstrable lies that you can find in the report. And these other lies, although less salacious, speak to her character. She insists again and again that when she arrived at the hospital, she was wearing a blue zip-up hooded sweatshirt. Her father seemed very confused by this. The other people asked about it don't remember her owning a blue hooded sweatshirt. And in fact, at one point, her father goes to try to get the sweatshirt. He's like, oh, do you mean this one? And when they're asked about it, she makes up a further lie that this was a sweatshirt that she'd bought in London, England, and that her father didn't know about. Like, her father seems to know most of her wardrobe. She's not a fancy dresser, as you can see from this photograph. But guess what? This photograph is from the security camera showing the clothing that she was wearing when she arrived at the hospital. She was not wearing a blue hooded sweatshirt. Now, does this matter? Well, it tells you what kind of person she is, what kind of stories she tells. She evidently felt it would make her story seem more compelling or more believable if there were this sweatshirt that was soaked with lighter fluid, that stank of lighter fluid, that provided more tangible evidence that her story was true. Now, actually, if your sweatshirt were soaked with lighter fluid and a live match or a lit lighter was thrown into your car, your whole sweatshirt would have burst into flames. So it actually makes your story less believable. But she thinks this makes her story more believable. And she makes up the further lie that because this shirt stank so much of the accelerant, of this flammable material, that the hospital staff took it away from her and threw it in the garbage. But look, this surveillance footage camera doesn't lie. Many people get into the habit of lying to their parents and getting away with it at an early age. And you know what? You may be accustomed to lying to authority figures at your school who fundamentally just don't care. Like, if you go into the principal's office and claim that you were sick when you weren't really sick, it's very likely the authority figures you dealt with in school fundamentally don't care about what's true or false. They've just got to get on with their schedule and deal with 40 other kids who have 40 other excuses for why their homework is late or why they couldn't write the exam or whatever it is. This seems to me somebody who has fundamentally become very comfortable with that childish habit of mind of making up stories and presuming she can get away with it.
Thank you to the viewers who have sent it to me. We will look into it a little deeper and give you updates as we get them.
It's easy to preach freedom of speech, and it's much more difficult to deal with problems of accountability. You might or might not have noticed the extent to which the reporters at TYT, the Young Turks, couched their words stating that they would follow up on this later after they'd investigated it more deeply because they weren't really entirely confident that this story checked out. Yeah, go ahead, search their YouTube channel, search all their websites, find any evidence of a retraction. Find me a video where they delivered the same hard-hitting message that I'm delivering to you here and now, that this was fraud, that this was a hoax, that this was massively influential political propaganda that reached an audience of millions of people and that frankly radicalized people at a time when there were really important political questions to be asking, simultaneous with this surreal, made-up, imaginary neo-Nazi attack on the streets of Wisconsin. The people of Wisconsin decided to demonstrate how woke they are by tearing down a statue of a white man without pausing to look up in Wikipedia who that white man was or why there was a statue to him. And guess what? He was anti-slavery. He died fighting to liberate the slaves. He was somebody who was on the right side of history, but nevertheless, Black Lives Matter protesters tore down his statue just because he was white. In the year 2020, mistakes were made, and there were important lessons to be learned from those mistakes. The Young Turks are going to only prevent you from learning them. ABC News, tragically, is going to prevent you from learning them, because none of these mainstream news sources did that most simple, essential thing that I did. None of them read the police report. Once in a while, I get an email asking me what this logo is. What do those 4 letters stand for? Active research and informed opinion. That's the motto. Hit me up. Maybe we can practice doing puppet shows.